Here we go.
Okay.
Welcome. Wellness Cleveland. My name's Patti.
And my name's Emily.
And we're joined by top Kendrick Lamar fan.
Yeah.
In the interest of this podcast, Planting Trees for Future Shade, I interview a number of people who have cultural and community organizing perspectives, things to share. And I have been talking in my private practice, my private therapy practice. My patients have been talking about the halftime show.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them very upset by it. Very upset and unable to say why they're upset by it.
Right.
And we have this wonderful tradition of family dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And we got into it yesterday.
Due to no one's fault, no one's bringing up. It came up naturally.
How could it have come up?
Nobody brought it up.
No
one person, that's for sure.
And people, that criticism of the performance that you have heard is what?
Not being able to understand the lyrics, thinking it was too controversial. I've even heard it wasn't enough, and not enough politically or controversially, but not big enough, not showy enough. You know, you had this whole stage do this big thing, like Rihanna was in the sky and Lady Gaga had 1 million dancers. What are you doing? You know, people feeling like it wasn't a performance, it was more of a speech.
You know what's funny is when you talk about Rihanna, I remember I don't know who Kendrick Lamar is, other than like I'm alive and I know that there's been a beef and, you know, like
I talk about him.
You've talked about Kendrick. I mean, but I don't really understand most of it.
Yeah.
So watching the performance, I thought of Rihanna's because I remember thinking Rihanna had such a beautiful visual spectacle, and none of it was sexy.
And you know, she actually got criticized for being very lewd, and she was covered very head to toe,
and like all of the dancers were covered, and all of the dancers wearing like
large
puff jackets
to
and
take
things.
away their figure.
And I was thinking like, oh, like
the showing of her pregnant belly was criticized.
Okay, so I remember I was watching and I was like, oh, like there's some colors here coming through, the red and white, and then the red, white, and blue, and like it's very patriotic, and I was like, oh. And then I was really struck by the cinematography and the setup of the shots.
Yeah,
I went into it anticipating I would not be able to understand everything that was said, but that's also how I attend live mushroom head shows.
I was going to say that's a big expectation from the Super Bowl is the sound quality and problems with the microphones and, you know, are we going to be able to hear them? Because sometimes you realize they're lip syncing because the Super Bowl is 3 seconds behind the singer's ear. And you're like, oh, they're in the wrong piece. You know, like there have been years where it's like, oh, the Red Hot Chili Peppers are definitely not playing their guitars right now. How do I know? They're not plugged in. Like little stuff like that has always been noticed. So I think a lot of the I can't understand it is when people listen to music, they're listening to their favorite songs and their styles of music. And if it's not your favorite song, you don't even know what you're listening for. You don't know when you're listening for pauses and breaks and melody and chorus. So not only were they watching this in the view of, well, this already isn't my favorite artist, and I don't know who Kendrick Lamar is. Now I don't know what he's saying, and he's saying it fast, and it seems like he's upset about something. Like it's just automatically very triggering to people who are ready to be triggered.
Yeah. I was expecting someone who looked... You know how like Nick Cannon and The Weeknd both had hair that was like locks, that it was in more of like an upright. Like I was expecting someone tall and thin with that kind of hair to be Kendrick Lamar. And I don't know why I had that mental image.
Kendrick Lamar is a very little guy. He's a cutie patootie.
He's a short king.
A lot of the girls' comments, like the girls and the gays comments after the Super Bowl were, where did he get his jeans?
Seriously,
the love for his jeans was all across mom TikTok.
Like, what is it about his jeans that people loved?
The top comment I saw was they fit in all the right places.
Oh.
Like a good tight on the thigh, flare boot. They're not low rise and they're not high rise. They look like good jeans.
I love all those things about
everybody was very happy.
Who doesn't love a good boot cut?
I know. And he's a very stylish man.
So you're going to tell us the symbols, the symbolism and the messaging and the red string tie-in.
Right. Yes.
I'm so pumped.
My crazy theories.
All right. So we have a little video that we've started and you've got some notes. So right now I'm on the Kendrick Lamar's Apple Music Super Bowl halftime show that was posted by the NFL on YouTube, and we are 19 seconds in. You were like, they said, let's just go. We're going to do it here. So we've got a giant 9-square grid with some pieces in it, and what is that about? What is the symbolism?
The opening symbolism is we're looking at a game board. The entire performance is about the American game, the industry game, the game that the
Mr. Monopoly game.
Right.
Yeah.
So then we have Uncle Sam, who's Samuel L. Jackson, in the center.
And Uncle Sam, I thought, was like very Monopoly Man-esque, but It was Uncle Sam.
It was Uncle Sam as in the government.
Okay.
But it was Samuel L. Jackson, who also played a very Uncle Tom role in the movie Django.
Oh.
So there's a couple layers with him picking him, but his name is Sam, you know?
Yeah.
So
Samuel L. Jackson, icon.
Honestly, yeah. If you want somebody to yell at you.
Yeah. Will you be in any show ever?
Right.
Yeah.
And then they also have Samuel L. Jackson, who's playing Uncle Sam in the center of the tic-tac-toe board, which is the most important piece. If you want to get a cat game or you want to immediately win a game, take the centerpiece. Now you're getting all the diagonals, you get up, down, you get straight through. Like, it's a important piece. So immediate symbol, Uncle Sam is locking up the game board. He's taking control of the game. This is his game now. Then we go into seeing what he says.
Okay. So he says, oh, it is not a Monopoly hat. It is Uncle Sam. The Great American Game. Now, Kendrick Lamar is up in the top left corner, and I did not realize this was Kendrick Lamar. I knew it was a Rock Nation show, and I thought it was someone they were featuring. And it was several scenes in where I was like, oh, that's him.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I thought he was directing it. I didn't know if he was going to be performing.
He also is somebody who has changed his look a couple times. So not all of the photos that they use for advertising were his current style. So like right now he's wearing a hat. You couldn't tell if he had locks, braids, or a fro. You know, like little stuff like that where you could like, if we talk about Coolio, you know exactly what style we're talking about.
I know the Coolio braid.
Like, yeah. So there's little stuff like that that also help. But it also starts off in a very dark, light overhead silhouette.
And he was wearing a jacket that I couldn't tell if it was a certain sports team.
It is not. It is a custom jacket with a designer that he's worked with several different projects. And there's like 12 different symbolic pieces all over it. There's like his recording label, Rock Nation's on there. There's PG Lang on the back reference. There's a Compton reference where he's from. PG Lang is his business. All these different symbolic patches, and it's his colors with the red, white, and blue for all the other symbols.
This is what everyone wants in Congress, is for everyone, just like a NASCAR suit, to wear who's sponsoring them.
It's a very patriotic show for how upset some people are who also love America.
All right.
So then he opens us up. He says, this is a great American game. We get into that.
And what is he rapping at the beginning? What song is he opening with?
He opens up with Squabble Up. So squabble up can mean two different things. In one term, it is squabble up, we're going to fight, square up. The other term, squabble up, can be referred to in some slangs as dancing. You know, let's like get into it and have a dance.
Like a dance off?
Not a dance off, but like, have you ever heard of like juking, jigging, getting sturdy? Like there's all different Louisiana bop. Like there's different regional dances it's a join-in dance. Yeah.
Join with me dance.
Right.
So squabble up can mean let's fight, or it can mean come on, let's get together and get on the same page.
Yeah, that's what I've heard from some different people, yeah.
All right.
Definitely squabble up. In his contacts, you saw people squabble up, and you saw the dancers coming in and fighting. And then we get into them all jumping out of his car, which the car that they all jump out of, like a car.
Hold on, we're 38 seconds in.
Yeah, I'm at 2 minutes.
We're squabbling. He's on the hood of a car.
So this car is a reference to one of his earlier albums. This is the car on the album, except it's not the exact one. This is gutted so that they can all come out from underneath the stage. All of his dancers come out from the car.
So is it the Squabble Up album?
I believe that's from that album, yeah.
I thought something was going to be up with the car. It looked like it was a prop, and I really loved the clown. I mean, that's what my coupes always look like. People just jumping out and jumping out. Red person comes out, white person comes out.
And then there's some speculation on the different colors. So they say that the red people are protectors of Kanye or of Kendrick Lamar, and they talk about the different colors, what they represent in our flag, and how this ties into it. So, the bravery in the red, and the innocence in the white, and the protection in the blue, and them being in certain formations at certain points. So you see how they're very uniform. They're all moving together.
The people in red are together and everyone else is off the stage.
Right.
And we see Kendrick Lamar's famous jeans that are fitting in all the right places for the first time.
And now notice the people in white. This later on, he says, "Oh, Kendrick or Samuel L. Jackson goes, oh, I see you brought your homeboys." This could be a reference to a couple different things. Him bringing up his crew from Compton into the industry and getting his friends a leg up in the world. This is also when later on you'll see everybody got shot from gunfire. His friends are still dancing and up around him. This could be their innocence and ignorance to all the violence that they're subjected to on a day-to-day basis.
So there's people all in red in one corner, and there's people in the center who are like coming up the steps,
so
like,
people in white are dancing and they're more free. The people in red are in a very rigid and uniform dance routine, and they are moving in sync. So there are 3 different groups: the blues, the whites, the reds. Some people thought it could be a call to the gang violence in Compton. A lot of it is also just the different levels of American diversity and lack thereof, the feeling of separation, and then the feeling of like we're united in things. And you see it when they like mix in with each other, and he's trying to express that we do feel connected on some things. Like we are all frustrated that eggs are expensive. We are all frustrated that, healthcare isn't good. But then we're divided on how we want to handle it and how we want to go about these problems and who's right and who's wrong and who matters first,
We're 1 minute and 40 seconds in. I mean, it's only a 13-minute.
Yeah, it's not a long performance. Some of them.
What's the A on his chain?
It's a reference to A minor and his company PG Lang, which you'll see in a flag in the back at some point. They run around with the flag. It's his PG Lang logo.
Oh, his guys in white all have Lana t-shirts.
Mm-hmm. And they're all hanging out, having fun. They're all together. Stiff.
Is he wearing a Flo Rida jacket?
It's like a Letterman, yeah.
I was like, maybe that's Flo Rida. I don't know. Squabble up, squabble up, squabble up, squabble up.
So we get Uncle Sam.
Too reckless, too ghetto.
All right, pause it. So there's a couple things. He says too loud, too reckless, too ghetto. These are things that Black women have been called, Black men have been called in workplaces, in school places, in family settings, in, not meeting the status quo of how I want you to act for me to feel comfortable and what's more palatable to me. And he knew he started off with squabble up. He started with coming out with his car from Compton. Like, he was going to get these critiques. So he's calling it out ahead of time that this isn't what we wanted. We didn't want loud, reckless, and ghetto. We wanted Kendrick Lamar to come out and play DNA and Loyalty and, play me my soundtrack from Black Panther so that my 6-year-old who watched Marvel can enjoy it. Like, I wanted the palatable to get it in check. Do you know how to play the game? Do you know that we're watching? Like, the industry, we expect certain things of you. And there's other layers.
Certain things of you. And I feel like too reckless, too ghetto. When Samuel L. Jackson was saying that, I was like, that's exactly what I'm anticipating the whitest whiteness in my life will say about this show, no matter what they do, which was so funny because I was watching the opening season and I was thinking about this dance competition show we used to watch, your dad and I, called Jabberwockies.
Yeah.
Right? When Jabberwockies won and they did all of this anonymous hooded dancing that was meticulous, and I was watching them like, oh, they're moving into this formation and it's going to be like that and it'll be like military precision. Then I thought it's still not going to be well received. Like, that was my bias going into it. And I have to say, as a social worker and trauma therapist for 25 years, this is a constant, persistent worry in a lot of people's minds all the time. Like, there's a Stevie Wonder song from before my time where he said, her clothes were worn, but never were they dirty. That really speaks to and encapsulates like the class experience of feeling like you're so poor. And my Aunt Charlotte has this story of being in, my dad and his family were raised in an area that was taken over by sisters of some missionary sisters mission, and they taught at the grade school, and they collected shoes for the poor and collected clothes for the poorer kids. And it was a Catholic school. So at that time in the 1930s and 40s, you either sent your kids to a Catholic school, or the Protestant school is what my dad called it. That's where like kids who aren't Catholic go, because these were highly ethnic neighborhoods that were centered around the language spoken, the language of your grandparents. And so you went to that ethnic religious school because it was like, oh, you put extra money in the basket and that was tuition, right? So even for poor families, it was very accessible and it reinforced cultural things, right? So my aunt goes into school and she's wearing new shoes. And like, I've been a kid who's gotten clothes from garbage bags, like hand-me-down stuff. And if you're a kid who's gotten that, like, if you get hand-me-down clothes in your home, it is the best day of your life. You're like ripping through it and excited and look at all this cool stuff. And like, you have been to stores, but you don't even want to touch anything for fear of breaking it.
And
like you can touch this
your
stuff
older sibling wore, and you remember when they got to wear this new t-shirt, and now it's your new t-shirt.
Yeah. And so Aunt Charlotte wears her brand new shoes to school, and another girl in her class looks at them and goes, "Oh, those were mine. I donated them to the poor." And like that feeling stuck with her entire 89 years of life, that she didn't want anyone to think that she was poor. And it was like it was a very driving motivator.
Yeah.
And I hear it in that Stevie Wonder song, right? And in the same vein, I have heard amazing, accomplished professional women be like, there's nothing that I can do with my hair that will not be perceived as too ghetto.
Yeah.
Or if I straighten it, then I'm like not black enough, or I'm showing off, or I'm showing up, or why are you trying to fit in? And like, there's never anything that I can do that won't be received with some kind of criticism from the outside. But if I dress to my own, or if I present my own confidence, which is what I'm supposed to do, then I'm reckless. Then I'm too sexy. Then I'm too whatever.
And a lot of my friends had the hard problems of, when you're in high school, you're getting your first job, you're learning how to work with people, how to work with managers, coworkers, customers, all these different relationships, and developing levels of maturity. And you have days where somebody hit you with a grocery cart and you're frustrated, and it was a long day, and you just got off of school and work, and now you're tired, and you want to complain about it. And you go to tell your manager, and they tell you, why are you being so loud and overreactive? When if I had told the same story, it would be, yeah, that customer, she really is awful sometimes.
I remember being very upset at I was in a national training program. We went somewhere, we were trained, we came back and we're doing conference calls, and I'm doing in-home family therapy. And I'm talking with a couple, and I'm treating this kid who's like 3 years old as my patient. But when you treat 3-year-olds, you're treating the parents, the caregivers, like up to 3 primary caregivers, and you're talking through their own, like, who raised you? Tell me about a time when you felt loved and special, And one person, one of the parents had transitioned and also hated their birth name. And I was like, oh, okay. And they were like, well, I can't even tell you what it is because it's so ghetto. And I was like, okay, well, I don't really need it for this forum. Like, that's not really relevant, whatever. And they were like, no, it's like so embarrassing, and it's so terrible, and it's the worst one. And like,
clearly these are things that they've been told their whole life.
And like, this is why we engage with parents, because that's such a big weight. And like, your little one who's 2, you don't have words that she can understand that tells you, like, it's just been a long day, kid, right?
Right.
But when she sees your face, she knows it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just like when you see her face, you know if she's gassy
Mm-hmm.
or if she's tired or if she's like laughing and she thinks it's hilarious versus laughing if she thinks it's hysterical. These are all nonverbal things we express through attachment.
Mm-hmm.
So we really want to understand, how do we build up your strengths and how do we understand the ways that your harm, we can plan around how to address that vacuum, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I bring this up on my conference call, which is a like speakerphone conference call with people somewhere else. And someone out, I'm like, talking about this therapeutic intervention I'm doing. And I was like, it's, fine or whatever. And the person on the phone was like, I'm so triggered by your use of the word ghetto that I can't even pay attention to this conversation. And I wish that you wouldn't use it. I was like, well, what do you want me to say? And I'm asking you how to do an intervention. And she's like, you don't understand how many coworkers and social workers I've heard refer to clients as ghetto or their names as being ghetto and made fun of their kids' names. And I was like, I don't even know what to say. I don't even know how to ask for help on this issue.
Yeah. Well, and it's, I've even had conversations with my friend Nasir, who loves to talk about anything. And he was talking about, well, if I say something that's rude, but I don't mean it in a rude way, does it still make it rude? And that's like the boiled down version of the conversation we were having, but it was around the word ghetto and everything. It was like, if I'm using it as a descriptor of my own community, am I still being degrading to my own community, even though this is how I've always described it? This is how my parents describe it, my friends, my teacher, like
this Jewish word.
This, and it's also just like,
this Jewish word, which means the place where we will allow Jews to live because they're poisoning our society.
Well, and that was the other thing is we talked about like the
it.
transformation of the word into what it was and to what it is now. And he was like, sometimes you just want to be at work and something's not working, and why is this so ghetto? You just want to say something, or why is this so janky or whatever? And that's what he was bringing up. And I'm like, yeah, but then that's showing you what
Does janky mean ghetto?
No.
Okay.
I was saying like janky, like it's broken, but saying like ghetto as in the same thing. It's broken. It's not working. This isn't right. And you're saying these negative things around this word.
If you tell me my office is ghetto, I know exactly what you mean.
Exactly. So you're not saying these things, and people pretend like they're not trying to be rude, but you know exactly what you're implying with these words. So when he says you're too loud, ghetto, and reckless, he knew exactly what he was saying with those words and what message he was trying to imply. And all of it you have to keep in mind is coming from Uncle Sam.
Why couldn't you just say you're being too ethnic? Triggered.
Not respond.
We're in a red, white, and blue pattern.
So we're symbolizing the flag. He's in the center.
What is this?
One of my favorite songs.
Okay, what's the song? This is no longer Swaggle Back. What is it?
Squabble Up.
Squabble Up. This is not Squabble Up anymore.
So, this is the song Be Humble, and this is about his upbringing in Compton. And so the line that he opens up with is, I remember syrup sandwiches and crumb allowances. So I remember having struggle food, and I remember having, penny allowances and
syrup sandwiches.
And that's the other part is I'm really bad at hearing lyrics, so that might not even be what he's saying, but I know what he means.
I know what syrup sandwiches are.
Oh,
I know.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay. So
do you know what a syrup sandwich is?
You're
not gonna believe it. It's when you have bread and you put syrup on it and you pretend it's a meal to convince yourself that you're not really hungry.
Oh, we didn't have syrup. He just ate bread and made toast.
I mean, old white ethnic people I know talk about onion sandwiches, tomato sandwiches, mustard sandwiches, butter sandwiches, government cheese sandwiches.
Yeah.
There's lots of versions of a syrup sandwich.
Right.
Yeah.
So, he's saying I remember the struggle, I remember the beginning, and
I remember syrup sandwiches and crumb allowances. I know what a crumb allowance is.
Right.
I mean, I never got an allowance, but
right. So, and then he goes through the song because I remember all this, be humble, sit down, remember where you're from. That's the message of that song. So he's going through, and that's also one of his bigger songs. So that's a callback to his Pimp Butter or Damn album.
Damn.
Yeah.
Okay. Your favorite song?
One of my favorite songs. My favorite song is Backseat Freestyle. He would never play that at the Super Bowl. They don't have enough censors for it.
So this whole segment made me think of Step.
Yeah.
Do you have a note on that?
No, I do have the symbolic of like them being in the flag formation and him being in the center of it, and you know, black people being at the center of America and them being the backbone of America. You know, one of the things that's
Like what? Okay, so I want to stop and say from a U.S. history perspective, which I've taken entirely too many AP history classes from Sister Therese Marie at Holy Name High School and at the College of Mount St. Joseph. I've taken like a ton of U.S. history because I absolutely love it.
So I took all Black American history and African American history and pre and post construction history. So one of the things that me seeing him in the center and what I was thinking of is not only Black people being at the center of, you know, the backbone of our country through slavery and all of the inventions that they've come up with coming out of that, but also how rap and hip hop and Black culture is at the center of every cultural movement and music movement and movie movement, but they're not captured and centered in the movie culture and music movement. So
and they're not going to
win.
Not represented.
Right. Up until honestly in the last, 10, 20 years. So they weren't going to win.
I would say Motown created its own center.
But I don't know if I would say Motown was as heavily awarded and heavily, advertised and given the contracts that people like
Shout
Elvis
out Dreamgirls. Watch the movie musical Dreamgirls and you will see like the appropriation of Motown in the 60s and what it took.
Exactly. But that being the thing that we idolize in, the Supremes and the Dreamettes and, talking about these wonderful female groups.
These wonderful exploited groups.
Exactly. Who were, didn't have money because they weren't given their money.
Or my homegirl, Salt and Pepper.
Exactly. Like just a history
Salt and
of
Pepper,
not
TLC,
getting their contract.
Like, I can't pay my light bill and I have
Lauryn
a number
Hill
one.
being one of the most decorated and celebrated female rap artists of all time, having no rights to her own music. So people are all talking on TikTok about how her concerts are garbage. She doesn't have the rights to her own album. And it's called The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. Like, it's hers. And yet it's overlooked. It's not brought to the forefront, because if you told me right now that Taylor Swift didn't own the rights to her music and couldn't go on her Eras tour, that the government wouldn't shut down, that President Trump wouldn't write an executive order, like, there's no way that white artists would be treated the exact same way. And same thing in the movies. There's no way that we would have a Tom Hanks in a way of Morgan Freeman, and comparatively Morgan Freeman is not as celebrated and awarded as Tom Hanks, but we would both consider them the grandfather and father of our households, of like, oh, such a soothing voice and, excellent acting skills. And, we love him for all of his deep emotional traits. But when you list top 10 actors is a back thought, So then the industry part is Kendrick Lamar has always been somebody who's pushed back, and his music has always been something that's got a message to it. And
before we go on to that, so we're talking about Black Americans as the backbone of the United States.
Right.
The world turned upside down with the United States declaring independence and gaining independence from the British Empire. There was no one who was doing that. It was very much a David and Goliath fight.
Yeah.
And they did it on the backs of slavery.
Yes.
Right? So there were people in chattel slavery in bondage here for like 300 years, and the colonies and the wealthy upper class landowners had the capital to finance a war against the empire because of the unpaid labor of people who had been here for like 400 years before my ancestors came here, and I'm a 4th and 5th generation American.
Yeah, and it's also the erasure of that history when you're in middle school and elementary school and even in high school, depending on where you go to school, being taught, oh, we were all farmers and we just wanted our land, and the British were taxing us too much, so we put their tea in the harbor, and we fought our battles with George Washington, pulled ourselves up, we were just young militias and had no money and nothing to, like, it's a very idealistic view of our country's history, and
we
not that it was people wealthy enough to have a ship to go across the Atlantic and survive for 4 months at sea, to then come here and still be able to build housing and farming and own land and have the seeds and crops prepared to come and establish land
and grown and shipped to them and have all this industry
and
while
this
you're
mass
away
trade
at
route.
war.
You're not doing that for poor farmers. Like, that's not for, you don't give those industries to people who have nothing. Those are for wealthy landowners and people who have never touched a shovel and people who have slaves and indentured servants and all this servitude around them. But those aren't the American people, because they did not have rights. They did not own land. So if you didn't own land, you didn't have rights. We had about a dozen people that we had rights to, you know?
Yeah.
So,
but if hard work made you the wealthiest person, the hardest working people were the wealthiest people, everyone would want to be a dairy farmer.
Mm-hmm.
Because they never take a day off, a morning off, an afternoon off.
Mm-hmm.
And that's absolutely not the case.
Right.
Okay. You have more notes.
I have so many notes. We haven't even seen SZA or Serena Williams.
We're only at 3 minutes and 48 seconds. Be humble. So why are we moving forward?
We're moving into the next act.
We're moving into the next act. Coming down off the steps. We're running away.
Yeah, they're all starting to scatter, and he's making, like, you know, imitation gun noises.
Bird.
If I could roll my tongue, I would be able to do that.
I could, but I won't.
So this is a song, DNA.
Yeah.
She's saying, I have royalty inside my DNA. I have loyalty, power, pain, ambition, like all these things from generations of, my people are from Africa. My people are royalty. Where I come from, you know, like all these different things of what makes up being an African American.
We have not talked about step in America.
Well, this is where we get into a lot of the dance, honestly. This is where you're going to see a lot of the choreography.
I love that their use of the field.
Mm-hmm.
They look
so
like
see
they're
the red
speed
stained
skating
with him.
Yeah. I feel like they're speed skating. What is
Yeah.
this move?
The marching.
Yeah. Progress. Is this still Be Humble?
No. No, that was a different song. So you see the people laying on the streetlights? That was that song. This is what he was doing in his music video. These are his homeboys sitting behind him. There's a lot of talk about why they're there and why there's just the people in white. So, you know, people have they have on their white t-shirts and they're hanging outside with him, and
I mean, I'm looking at that and I'm like, oh, they're selling together on the street corner. That's my immediate assumption. A bunch of young black men in long white t-shirts, they're selling.
That looks like my friends hanging out after school. That looks like, okay, I see the guys, they're done with practice. You know, like they put on their t-shirts, we're ready to go to the bus stop.
Oh.
You know?
What song is this?
That song is what's it called? All Right. That song is called All Right. So he's, you know, talking about laying in the clouds and pretending he's a cloud, and, you know, talking about the different sides of himself. So flip a coin. Do you want the dramatic me or do you want the humble me? Do you, like, which side of me do you want?
Culture cheat code.
Scorekeeper, deduct one life. So from this girl, her name is Jessica Clemens. She works for New Rock Stars. She had the point of view that deduct one life is that him being Uncle Sam telling the U.S. people deduct one life, or is that him telling Scorekeeper one life in the grand scheme of things. It's also talking about how, people hanging outside and being outside. And I remember having this happen in high school. You're not doing anything wrong and you get shot and killed. You're just hanging out at the park bench. So, you weren't following the rules. You were just hanging out on the street lights to duck one life. So, what that can mean and where that could come from, there's a couple different ideas. But also just the imagery of them hanging out and being relaxed and like they're smiling, they're in good moods. It's not a typical image that you see in media of Black men being happy and joyful. They're usually very serious and stoic. And, you have people's facial expressions you come to mind to think of like Dr. Dre and Ice Cube, of like these mean mugs and growls and stuff like that. And really not giving Black men the space to be emotional or vulnerable in media. So him smiling a lot is also a big deal. Or I say his friends too smiling. And one of his friends had a hat on that said peekaboo, which ends up being the closing song. I don't know if it's closing, but it's towards the end.
So did you get the Muppet movie opening that your dad sent you to this?
No.
This section in particular, which starts at like 6 minutes and 10 seconds, we'll say, where there's red. I love this red like X T.
Mm-hmm. So they're inside the X of the tic-tac-toe.
So they're inside the X of the tic-tac-toe, which I think is beautiful cinematography, and they're just dancing to the Muppet Show opening song.
There's another creator called Blackie Speaks. He was talking about how inside the X you have the 3 different groups and they're all dancing differently, and it keeps panning around to them, and it could be the different sub-communities in our country or the different groups that people feel are representative, and how we're all moving differently but we're all talking about the same thing. And this is where he starts to like drop little references about Drake and drop little references about what he's going to bring up at the end of the show with the Not Like Us, and you start to hear little samples in there.
Well, your dad, I don't know why. Oh, I'm sure it was just on his TikTok, but we were watching something and it was, it's time to start the music.
Mm-hmm.
It's time to light the lights. And it syncs up perfectly because it's the exact same beat.
BPM,
and never would you refer to your future late father-in-law as being a thug or being too militant or being revolutionary at a halftime show. Although the dance goes along perfect. What's the song?
Bing bop, boom bop, bing bop, bam. Type of shit I don't understand. I can't remember what it's called. Peekaboo. Yeah, the one I just said. Duh. So you see how they're moving different?
Mm-hmm.
And remember, all the people in white, they're having fun. There's nobody in red. There's nobody in blue. This is all white backup dancers.
Party.
Right.
Innocent.
This is reference to favorite song, Not Like Us. Dun, 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 dun. That's Not Like Us. He's talking about Drake.
So this is part of the big beef.
This song is, yes, this is part of the beef. He slowed it down. Fa, 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 fa. But he turns it into Luther with SZA.
So this is another Rock Nation artist.
Yeah, so this is SZA. She's been famous for a very long time. She also was Drake's ex. They dated back in 2009.
SZA is SZA?
Yes.
Okay.
Drake's ex from 2009. So is Serena Williams. So they're like two little look at me dancing on stage with your exes.
What is this song about?
Being in love. And then SZA is also somebody who's very into dance and having, symbolic, traditional, like, at the end of her song,
Okay, there's a triangle and a circle. I really loved this walking around on the circle that's like lower and higher, and it made it feel like this endless staircase.
This is All of the Lights. This is from Black Panther's soundtrack.
Oh.
Which he, or Stars, All the Stars, that he did with SZA.
People are walking down the field.
Mm-hmm. But like you said with Step in America, SZA has at the end of one of her songs the audio, the step routine, and you can hear them stepping and clapping, and the importance of that to her is also you can see in the dance.
So step is an organized dance routine. To me, it's like on par with being in a flag corps or a marching band, a sorority, a fraternity.
Divine Nine and stuff. Yeah.
I was thinking of like the Prohibition movement. Mm-hmm. And like the draw to have cultural spaces not built around alcohol. Mm-hmm. Like that is very big in step to me. I know there's like a lot of little kid or like Irish dancing, cheer, all the like little kids who would be in parades for white people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's thing that for me has always been raised in discipline. If you knew somebody who did step, you knew that they had a mentor and you knew that they had like people in their lives. A lot of them had like older brother programs that my friends were involved in.
There's like a code of conduct.
Yeah,
you can get kicked out.
Yeah, and that's why I say sorority and fraternity is because you see a lot of that strolling dancing and like their like frats call outs and stuff. All of it is a sign of not only was I in a frat or a sorority and I graduated my degree, I had the time to sit here and figure out these dances, and I know my call out and I know my AKs. Like,
and you had the discipline to be accountable to your organization to be featured.
Yeah.
So what is this next?
So this is
Sammy.
Him saying, "Good job. That's what I wanted. You calmed it down. You brought out the nice music we asked for. This is what I wanted. Don't mess it up." And then he cuts him off with Drake. 40 acres and a mule, this is bigger than the music. That's a callback to when slaves were given the false promise of you were getting 40 acres and a mule to start your big start, and it never happened. So when people talk about reparations, they have a dollar amount. Well, the dollar amount is my 48 acres and a mule, and what would that cost you today? Yeah. That's what I need.
And that's their version of the GI Bill. Come and fight for us. Come and fight for the United States of America. And as a result, which my father owned his 4-family home that he was a landlord of, which he used his GI Bill to purchase. Mm-hmm.
Then he's going to bring out Mustard, who's the rapper and the, beat producer or co-producer on this song. So you see how they're all...
I saw they were all dancing.
They're all mixed together.
All the colors are together, red, white, and blue.
So you see how they all fend?
Dead.
Yeah, but his friends are still up and dancing.
So what was that symbolizing? That everyone else died except for his crew?
Because they are so immune to the violence around them. They just keep dancing and having a good time. They grew up in violence.
Very wicked. Very Fierro dancing through life.
I have a huge wicked reference to bring up at the end. Don't you worry. And you see how he didn't have to say it. Everybody's dancing. We all get along when we're listening to the beef. Everybody's having fun now. Serena Williams, who is one of his exes and also was told she was too loud, ghetto, and reckless at the U.S. Open when she crip walked her celebratory dance.
I know. Marching band.
So they're about to bring out Mustard. Which is also the same thing of you brought your homeboys.
Yeah, I had no idea who that was.
Then you hear him saying, "Turn this TV off." So there's a couple things with that. That's a song, "Turn the TV Off." And he's saying, turn his TV off, turn off Drake's, so he doesn't have to see this. Turn the TV off when he says the revolution is now and it's going to be televised. You picked the right time, just the wrong person. So that's, you put me in charge of the Super Bowl show in this highly political time. You're going to get what I'm going to say. And you all picked Trump, and this was not the time to pick Trump. So then there's also...
That's what he's saying there.
That's all layers of what he's saying. And then the ironic part is, while all this going on, and he's talking about the televised revolution and, turn the TV off, and, we're watching the Super Bowl, there was a Gaza protest on screen that we couldn't see. And there were people holding up Palestinian flags and flags for Sudan.
At the Super Bowl?
At the Super Bowl. They were his dancers. They put flags inside their costumes and pulled them out. And
but they were not televised.
It is not on TV. You cannot see the performance. But we saw it from people who were at the show.
I was like, there's so many more people up on there. I can see them in the...
That's his company. That's PG Lang. There's a flag like somewhere over here with
the
them.
X and the O and the triangle.
They're standing on there with flags. Yeah. So while he's talking about protesting, we are protesting and not being shown on TV. And it's also turn the TV off. Our constant perception and what we're being fed from the media, it's the media. It is what you are going to be shown. You're not going to be shown everything.
They're selling wolf tickets, people.
Exactly.
They're running together.
Turn this TV off. Turn this TV off. And then you get the game over. So then there was also other sayings up in the crowd of wrong way. It was like, it didn't say act one, but like part one or something. So, telling people that they were going in the wrong direction. When he was starting to get too political, it was like, turn around, you're doing the wrong thing. That's not what we want from you. And I think the larger part to be brought up about the Drake and Kendrick beef isn't just that that's what people wanted to see. And, that's why he did it, was like, people have been streaming Not Like Us and Meet the Grams and all the Family Matters stuff.
And he is largely considered to have won the beef.
Right.
This
Very
major
much so.
cultural phenomenon that's happened in the last 6 months.
But then there's also, Kendrick and Drake as artists in the industry. So you look at, we have Drake, who is this light-skinned Canadian man who is not American, who is not a part of rap culture in Compton or New York. He grew up in Toronto and is born and raised kind of in the industry. Like, he was in Degrassi and as a young teenager, and he quickly had success, and as somebody who's been able to ebb and flow with the trends of the industry. So he's had
been,
his
to me,
R&B era.
I know who Drake is, right? So that to me means he is more pop.
Mm-hmm. And he's gone more mainstream of, out of all the people at OVO with Lil Wayne and Nicki Minaj and Drake, of all that, you're more likely to hear Drake on the radio and hear his songs, because he has some where he's singing and rapping and, more of the...
And he had the God's Plan music video, which was new. No one else had done.
Yeah, people loved the God's Plan thing.
Can you talk about the God's Plan thing of what Drake did?
Just how
I just want to watch it hurt inside your body to say something nice about Drake.
It was a very generous thing to do and a very positive thing to do, giving so much money and light to other people. And it was also a very good song for the time that it came out, of meeting, God's plan of, things happen, but God's got it.
Yeah.
Eventually.
So he requested a budget to make this video. And then he took the entire budget in cash and had his friends videotape him in
giving out money.
Just going to a grocery store and being like, all your groceries are paid for, and just paying for groceries for people.
Seeing kids playing outside and just handing them a stack of money. Go do whatever,
Yeah.
But then we have Kendrick Lamar, who has been in the industry for the same amount of time, in my eyes. He was famous in the early 2000s as well, but not as much media coverage, and you don't know who he is to the point you couldn't even recognize him standing out. And I listened to his album.
He was doing the show, I didn't know who he was.
And I listened to his music every day of high school.
Absolutely.
Like, that got me to school in the morning.
Well, I am deeply aware of how much you love Kendrick Lamar and could not pick him out.
And it is because he goes against the industry and he says things that are more political and activist based. And hey, let's talk about what it's like living in Compton and what it's like growing up as a Black man and what it's like seeing this racial and class inequality. And it is against the industry. And we don't always want to hear what his style of rap has to say because, you know, right now it's not trending on TikTok, but he still drops it and still makes it. So, you know, just seeing and that's what I was going to say, the Wicked, the Elphaba and Galinda of it, where I think Kendrick Lamar is very Elphaba. He's, you know, seeing the problems within the system and he's seeing the problems within the industry and calling out and saying something to it. And he's seen as this, you know, edgy and smart and intelligent, spunky guy. And then you have Drake, who is, you know, BBL Drizzy and the soft, cute, light-skinned guy who's going to give you a hug and hold your hand, and, you know, Champagne Poppy, who knows that there's stuff going on in the industry, and we know that he knows because of these pedophilia allegations, and he continues to just shine in the limelight and act like he has no idea what's going on. And then there's also the Wesley theory that comes into it with, you know, Wesley Snipes being one of the most famous actors of his time and being such a huge, huge deal, and, you know, having such wrong people around him that he ended up going to jail for tax evasion, when we know how big of a deal that crime is with people like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, but we don't see them being thrown in jail and their careers starting over and them getting, you know, the bad end of the stick. So it's kind of how the industry is willing to use and dispose of Black people and their ideas and their contributions to hip hop and acting and music and all this other stuff, and then immediately let them take the fall for a cancellation or a tax evasion or whatever is going on that would destroy their community or their career, without giving them financial literacy and showing them media training and teaching them how to be famous. It's more of like oh, look at this success story who came up from nothing and aren't they so famous, and you didn't do it right, game over. And that's the American game that he was also talking about, is there's rules at play that you might not know, but you better learn them, and you better figure out how to learn them because we already showed the other guys.
Because the people who get those big paychecks get really, really big bills.
Mm-hmm.
And it costs so much money to maintain money.
And that was one of the things that Taraji P. Henson was bringing up a lot last year and the year before, was how little Black women are paid in Hollywood, but you expect me to have on Louis Vuitton at the red carpet, and you expect me to have private security because you all stalk me, and I need to have $1 million home or else you're making fun of me, and I have to have my nails and my makup done at all times, and I have a makeup artist, and like my staff needs to be paid.
So it wasn't Spike, it wasn't Wesley Snipes. Definitely had a lot of tax problems, and it was someone else who I heard talking in the last like 5 years about their financial issues. And they were like, yeah, I had to have all of these tax forms from every state I performed in. And every single one of them had a different tax rate. And some of them I was supposed to have prepaid, or I owe, or could be written off.
And like, you could go to jail for going on tour.
You need to have financial people managing your money for you.
And all of those people need to also get paid. So there's a lot of, like you said, spending money to make money and keep your money. And if there's nobody around you telling you how to do that, then how do you do that? And that's the thing of, you know, we talk about arts and media and stuff, but the sports side of it, and all these young Black men who are told, well, if you want to go to college, you need to play basketball or football. You better learn how to throw a baseball. Like, figure out how you're going to get into college and be successful. But also, you need to spend so much time being an athlete and being entertainment for us that you don't have legal counsel and you don't have literary financial stability. And all of these things that will keep you prosperous for your little 5 years of entertaining us, where we see you get hit like a truck on TV, and now you have CTE and long-term physical therapy issues, and you have no insurance because you didn't work for a corporation, even though the NFL's a corporation.
They're no longer a nonprofit, though.
Finally. So, yeah, there's a lot of layers of just like...
Hashtag NFL cares.
Calling out the industry and the levels of systemic problems in it. And it's not just America. It is everything below it.
All right. So overall, you liked this halftime show.
Loved it. Loved it. Exactly what I wanted.
This has been a lovely dive into the halftime show, and I appreciate that.
I feel like I did a bad job. I think there's so much more that could have been talked about. And I think there's a lot of, like, the two people I referenced had really great videos on it. They had really, really good videos.
So who are the people?
It was Jessica Clemens and then Blackie Speaks. Jessica Clemens' video was on New Rock Stars.
New Rock Stars, Jessica Clemens, and Jessie Speaks.
Blackie Speaks.
Blackie Speaks have good commentaries, not from your favorite white girl.
Yeah.
Who's not white passing.
No.
All right. So like, subscribe, follow.
It's the chef.
It's the chef. It's with a Z.
Yes.
On TikTok. And you can subscribe to the Planting Trees for Future Shade podcast. Thank you.